Have you ever wondered how the course of history might have shifted if the outcomes of certain wars were different? Let's take a step back in time to an era where Rome and Carthage, two burgeoning powers, were locked in a tense battle for supremacy. Their rivalry was fueled by geopolitical and economic tensions. Rome, an emerging republic, was eager to expand its reach. Carthage, on the other hand, was a well-established maritime power, controlling vast territories in the western Mediterranean. The strategic importance of Sicily, a fertile island sitting at the crossroads of trade routes, became a bone of contention between these two powers. As Rome's ambitions grew, so did its military might. Their armies, composed of infantry and cavalry, were led by consuls, a testament to their organized and disciplined approach to warfare. Meanwhile, Carthage, with its naval supremacy, was a formidable adversary, controlling the seas and maintaining a strong presence in Sicily. The escalating conflicts, fueled by the desire for control and the fear of loss, were like sparks near a barrel of gunpowder. All it needed was a trigger, and the spark was provided by the struggle for Sicily. And thus, in 264 BC, the stage was set for the first of the Punic Wars. The First Punic War, a grueling conflict that stretched over 2 decades, marked the beginning of Rome and Carthage's power struggle. A battle for dominance in the western Mediterranean, it was a war that saw the rise of one power and the beginning of the end for another. In the early stages of the war, Rome found itself at a disadvantage. Carthage, with its superior navy, dominated the seas, but Rome was not to be outdone. Recognizing the need for naval power to win, they embarked on a massive shipbuilding initiative. Building their fleet from the ground up, they incorporated an innovation that would prove crucial: the corvus, a boarding bridge that allowed Roman soldiers to engage in close combat on enemy ships, effectively turning a sea battle into a land battle, an arena where Rome excelled. The war raged on, with both sides scoring victories and suffering defeats. But the real turning point came in 241 BC at the Battle of the Aegates Islands. Rome's adapted naval strategies combined with their superior numbers led to a decisive victory over the Carthaginian fleet. This defeat forced Carthage to sue for peace, marking the end of the First Punic War. Following their victory, Rome annexed Sicily, turning it into its first-ever province. This was a significant gain, as it not only provided Rome with a strategic base in the Mediterranean, but also gave them control over the fertile lands of Sicily, greatly enhancing their economic power. But despite this defeat, Carthage was not ready to be relegated to the sidelines of history. Their spirit remained unbroken, and they began to rebuild, preparing for the inevitable rematch. The stage was set for the next chapter in this epic power struggle. Rome emerged victorious, but the rivalry was far from over. As Rome consolidated power, Carthage licked its wounds and prepared for the inevitable rematch. The Second Punic War, begun in 218 BC, saw the rise of one of history's greatest military minds, Hannibal Barca. A Carthaginian general, Hannibal was known for his audacious strategies and indomitable spirit. His most daring feat was perhaps the crossing of the formidable Alps, a move that took the Romans by surprise. With a formidable force of infantry, cavalry, and the famed war elephants, Hannibal descended into Italy, ready to challenge Rome's supremacy. In Italy, Hannibal's brilliance on the battlefield led to a string of victories. From the Battle of Trebia to the Battle of Cannae, Rome tasted defeat at the hands of this Carthaginian genius. Yet, despite these victories, Hannibal faced a significant strategic failure: the inability to capture Rome itself. While he defeated Rome's armies, he could not break the city's walls. Rome, though battered, stood defiant. As the war dragged on, Rome gradually regained its footing under the leadership of Scipio Africanus. The tide turned decisively at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. This was a clash of titans, as Hannibal and Scipio faced off on the plains of North Africa. But Rome had learned from its defeats and adapted its strategies. At Zama, the Roman legions outmaneuvered Hannibal's forces, securing a decisive victory and marking the end of the Second Punic War. The terms imposed on Carthage after the war were severe. Carthage lost its overseas territories and its navy. It was also forced to pay a crippling war indemnity to Rome. These punitive terms were designed not only to weaken Carthage, but also to ensure Rome's dominance in the western Mediterranean. Despite Hannibal's tactical brilliance, Rome once again emerged victorious. But the seeds of resentment were sown deep in Carthage. The Third Punic War, beginning in 149 BC, spelled the end for Carthage. This final chapter in the violent saga between Rome and Carthage was born out of fear and paranoia. Rome, despite having defeated Carthage twice before, was still wary of its rival's potential resurgence. Carthage, though significantly weakened, had managed to recover economically, and this revival of fortune was viewed as a threat by the Romans. The Third Punic War was, in many ways, a war of attrition. Rome laid siege to Carthage, cutting off supplies and resources. The Carthaginians put up a fierce resistance, but without external aid, their position grew increasingly desperate. It was a brutal and relentless conflict, marked by starvation, disease, and sheer desperation. After a 3-year siege, Rome finally overran Carthage in 146 BC, but the Romans were not content with just defeating their old adversary. They wanted to ensure that Carthage could never again rise to challenge them. So they razed the city to the ground, sold the surviving inhabitants into slavery, and reportedly even sowed the land with salt to render it barren. This act of utter destruction symbolized the ultimate victory of Rome over Carthage. It was a stark demonstration of Rome's power and ruthlessness, a message to the rest of the world about the consequences of opposing the Roman Republic. With Carthage's fall, Rome's dominance in the Western Mediterranean was uncontested. The Punic Wars shaped the trajectory of Western civilization. But what if things had turned out differently? Let's indulge in some speculative history for a moment. Imagine, for instance, if Hannibal had emerged victorious in the Second Punic War. Would Rome have been reduced to a footnote in history, with Carthage as the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean? These what-ifs, while fascinating, are just that, hypotheticals. The reality is that Rome won, and its victory shaped the world we live in today. While what-if scenarios can be intriguing, understanding the actual course of history helps us learn valuable lessons for the future. The Punic Wars were defining events in the history of Rome and Carthage. Over the course of 3 monumental wars and a subsequent revolt, we've seen how these conflicts shaped the destiny of 2 formidable powers. The First Punic War set the stage with Rome's victory and annexation of Sicily. Then came the Second Punic War, marked by Hannibal's audacious invasion of Italy, only to end in Carthage's defeat. The final act, the Third Punic War, witnessed the utter destruction of Carthage. These wars were more than just battles of territory and supremacy. They were crucial episodes in Rome's expansion and a testament to Carthage's control of territories in the Western Mediterranean. As we've seen, the Roman armies, consisting of infantry and cavalry, led by consuls, were a force to be reckoned with. In the grand scheme of things, the Punic Wars had far-reaching implications, influencing the political, economic, and military landscape of the time. They were emblematic of the constant flux of power and the inherent unpredictability of history. In the grand tapestry of history, the Punic Wars stand out as a stark reminder of the dramatic rise and fall of great powers.